we're proposing that it be designated as a climate refuge. That designation doesn't exist. It's going to have to be created and figure out what that would look like. What would the management be like in such a place? But our vision of the climate refuge is a place that maximizes the amount of carbon that can be stored in the long-term safekeeping of old and mature forests. It's the only sane thing to do with these giant carbon-storing forests to keep them protected.
Welcome, wild ones. This is Josh Schlossberg, host of the Green Root podcast, the official podcast of Eco Integrity Alliance, where we're on a quest to uncover the roots of the ecological crisis. This episode, I'd like to welcome Rick Bass. Rick Bass is the executive director of the Yaak Valley Forest Council, which is yaakvalley.org, which he helped found in 1997. The Yaak Valley Forest Council works for a wild yak through science, education, and bold action. Welcome to the Green Root podcast.
Thank you, Josh.
Very glad you're here. Been familiar with both your advocacy work and your writing for many years, so this is a real treat. So let's just start from the beginning. What is and where is the Yaak Valley?
Yeah, it's a good place to start. It's the singular landscape, singular geography. It's far in the northwestern corner of Montana, right up on the Canadian border and the Idaho border, and it's at the intersection of the Pacific Northwest weather systems and then the Northern Rockies. So you've got rain and rot and moss influencing part of the ecosystem, and then you've got big historic fires and more seasonal regular fires affecting the same landscape. The two come together there, and it's as such it's a landscape of extreme uniqueness as far as disturbance and stability. I mean, you've got a lot of disturbance from the fire, and then you have a lot of stability from those ancient forests that just exist sustainably across the centuries with rot and gap creation. It's extraordinary. It's like a scientific laboratory, about 1 million acre landmass north of the Kootenai River and south of Canada.
Yeah, it seems like a really special place. I've been to Montana. I haven't been there. I lived in the Pacific Northwest for a while. So yeah, it was really fascinating to me, this idea that more or less a Pacific Northwesterny ecosystem was that far east. So that's really, really interesting. And like you say, that is why it needs to be protected. So is this area under threat?
Yeah, no, under threat. I mean, the world is under threat, of course, with climate change, but the yak has been historically the timber breadbasket of the West and of Montana. It's a valley of superlatives. It's the lowest elevation in Montana, even though it's so far north and west. It just drops down into this basin about 1,800 feet above sea level is again the lowest point in the state. It's where water first comes into the state of Montana. It's the only place I know of in Montana where nothing has gone extinct since the last ice age. During the last ice age, the yak sat beneath the ice as the glaciers retreated north. They left behind this bowl of ice, the valley, and it was under ice for another 2,000 or more years, longer than the rest of the western Montana that was being carved up by the glaciers retreating. Only about a third of the Yaak Valley stuck up high enough to be glaciated, and the rest is just this low, very Appalachian looking landscape. The landforms are very soft and rolling hills and foothills, other than that 1/3 that's glaciated. So just in extreme geographical and geomorphological diversity, extreme biodiversity, extreme alpha and beta diversity, not just the number of species, but the relationships between species are really unique there. It's there's no place like it, in the world.
Well, it seems like the double-edged sword is the fact that it's wet and low elevation, which means a lot of biodiversity, lots of life, but that also means the trees grow pretty fast and big, and it probably means they're easy to get at because of lower elevation. So the logging companies have been, like you say, hammering that area for quite some time, unfortunately.
You say that like you have some familiarity with the protocol.
I have some. That is the case. Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm living in Colorado these days, and the forests are dry and they don't grow as fast and big, but they're still looking to cut. And right now, one of the big excuses, I would say, is what some of us call wildfire pretense logging. So logging around wildfire. So this is a wetter region. So they're not saying that, are they? Are they using that as an excuse up there too?
They are using that as an excuse up here also. It's it's a fascinating case study in activism, really, as well as in science. The proposal is called the Black Ram geographic area, the Black Ram Vegetative Management Proposal, or was called. Took us parts of 9 years to defeat it in court, and then again in appeals court, and we did win at great expense to the taxpayer and at great expense to our organization. But we did successfully defend it. But right from the jump, we went into the proposed cutting units with the agency in the scoping process and said, why are you in here? This is a swamp, and this is old growth, and this is 12 miles from the nearest woodshed. No, nobody lives around here. It's downwind of town. It's upslope of town. It's in a swamp. Like, it's on the Canadian border. Like, are you trying to do fuels reduction to protect Canada? But that's what they advertised it as, was fuels reduction. It was just, the old volume uh, directive. Literally, the previous Trump administration had issued a directive to increase logging by 40% and do away with scientific assessment wherever possible, and that's what led to Black Ram being proposed. But we fought so many, bad timber sales up here in the last many years that this area was just so extraordinarily unique and special that we could not afford to lose. We had to win. We had to do whatever it would take to win, and we weren't sure that traditional defenses would work. Uh, I mean, the volume in there was just extraordinary. 600 to 800-year-old large trees, centuries old cedar, hemlock. Again, that diversity. You'd have a giant spruce growing next to a giant larch, next to a giant cedar. These species that aren't supposed to associate with each other, and they were just prospering next to each other at enormous girth. Something different was going on in this area than other forests. It turned our traditional notions of forestry upside down to have that much basal area per acre. It just seemed inexplicable. One of the reasons it is able to sustain across the centuries, across the millennia, so much volume and defend against wildfire. Very much of the area shows no signs of wildfire. It has an innate built-in wildfire prevention or deflection system. It's in a swamp. It's on a perched water table, super wet. The U.S. headwaters of the Yaak River. And these old carcasses hold so much water and so much organic material when the big giants lean over and down into the swamp, and then the other ones start growing out of them, and then they lean over, and then you've got giants growing out of the heart of giants, out of the heart of giants, out of the heart of giants, all the way down. And so it's not really like soil. It's kind of like a hydroponic, bed of organic material. It's extraordinary. And the fact that the agency was proposing this 750 acres of clear cutting in there, contiguous clear cutting, just a desert wasteland up in the swamp was unacceptable to us. So we brought in independent scientists to agree with our suspicions and findings, and they confirmed them. We spent a lot on a lot of studies, and we're continuing to do a lot of scientific assessment of our own in the area. But we also started bringing in artists, cultural leaders to make paintings of the old forest, and poets such as the poet laureate of the U.S., Ada Limon, and Mississippi's poet laureate, Beth Ann Finley, and Kristen Browski from Montana. A lot of poets to take them on walks through the forest and to write about their experience, which they've done. And painters also, the great conservation painter Monty Dolat came in and just finished this huge mural that represents most of the biodiversity in the old forest. It's extraordinary. It's like something from Rousseau, an amazing tableau. And great landscape painter Clyde Aspevig, who many consider the finest living landscape painter uh, working today, came in and painted another large painting and of the old forest. So we're bringing in these artists to also combine with the findings of the scientists to probe deeper into trying to understand this place and its effect on on sensitive species in a time of climate change. One of the most exciting projects we did to defend the old forest using non-traditional means is to have this master luthier make a guitar out of an ancient spruce that the Forest Service had knocked over, building an access point to the edge of the units, and 315-year-old spruce tree. And we went in and sawed out a piece about the size of a whale vertebrae and wheelbarrowed it out and drove it to Kevin Kopp in Bozeman. And he made this incredible guitar. And we've been taking it around the country, having the world's country's leading musicians play a song of their choosing on it. And Jeff Bridges, the actor and musician, heard one of the performances, and he commissioned 6 more guitars to be made from that piece of wood with Breedlove Guitars as part of their sustainability campaign called "We're All in This Together." And so it's been a real fun campaign. We've been heartsick every day, worrying that we were going to lose this 1,000-year-old forest, but it's also brought a lot of joy. And we've been having these annual events, kind of climate aid events, and Maggie Rogers played the guitar in Portland, Maine, and James McMurtry and some other folks played it here in Montana this last year. Uh, Jeff Bridges has played it, and we're just passing it around the country to other musicians. And at these performances, what we find out is it's an opportunity for, even just for the evening, to convert this fairly high level chronic condition of climate grief that we walk around with, to convert it to climate joy just for the evening, and to hear this beautiful instrument making these beautiful songs and beautiful sounds. And it's a really positive thing. So we're rocking on, just keeping on defending this place. We're proposing that it be designated, as I know you're aware of it, as a climate refuge, which that designation doesn't exist. It's going to have to be created and figure out what that would look like. What would the management be like in such a place? But our vision of the climate refuge is a place that maximizes the amount of carbon that can be stored in the long-term safekeeping of old and mature forest. As we know, the big trees store so much more carbon than younger trees, and they take up carbon. Their uptake is much faster than smaller trees. So it's just it's the only sane thing to do with these giant carbon storing forests to keep them protected. And this would be the first one. And then once we establish that, it could link to other old forests, particularly in the northern latitudes where they store so much carbon in the cold, wet soils. In what we envision being a curtain of green around the northern latitudes all the way around the world. And such a curtain could absorb up to 12% of the world's annual carbon emissions. And so it's not a pipe dream, and it's not an insubstantial tool in slowing the rate of climate change. But it begins, with this one seed of this one tree in Black Ram, this one forest, this one guitar. She was a tree for 315 years, and now she's been a guitar for about 1 year.
That's amazing. Yeah, so much good stuff there. So I'm a musician myself and a writer, and recently I've been talking about this concept of a culture of what I call ecosystem advocacy, whatever you call it, environmentalism, it doesn't matter, but just the cultural aspect to it, right? So of course we got to do advocacy, we have to do organizing, activism, that's extremely important. But what about the cultural component? What about the music, the art, just the, like you said, the joy, the celebration? It's hard to be in the trenches all the time. And frankly, I will speak for myself. Maybe I don't always model what looks like an attractive activist life. It seems like stressed, kind of angry. It's a lot of despair. So I love this idea of, well, literally turning the tree that had already been, taken down into a guitar, playing music, all of that. I love that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's for us to survive as individuals and activists, and as a culture, we have to find joy in the things that we love about being alive, and art is a great leader in so many social movements, and that's our bet here. That's our gambit to protect this incredibly unique place.
Right. And so this region in particular, is this grizzly habitat?
It is. Yep. Great question. That is the the driver of the ecosystem is the grizzly bear up here, and it's the flagstone, keystone species, whatever you want to call it. It is the primary species that affects so much at all elevations in all seasons, and it's also the most endangered population of grizzlies in North America. We have, according to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we have an average of 3.2 female grizzlies with cubs per year. I mean, it's almost like like Noah's Ark, getting down to the single digit numbers. And so it's extreme. The grizzlies and the yak are existing at extreme threshold. They are called the Walking Dead by some scientists. And our group, the Yaak Valley Forest Council, is determined to recover them rather than to see them go extinct. They're a unique race of bears. They're smaller than the grizzlies over on the Rocky Mountain front. Um, a lot more vegetation in their diet than lower meat percentages, and they're more secretive. And again, they're found at the lowest elevation where you'll find grizzlies in the lower 48. It's just a really special, important, isolated population. It's transboundary. They go back and forth across the Canadian border into the Purcell Mountains, which is Canada's largest mountain range. So we've kind of got a straw tapped into this enormous wild ecosystem going up toward the Yukon. But yeah, it's so important, this cultural and arts campaign, that we take pride and joy in the work and the delight of creative people, or the art made by creative people, because it's every day is could be the last day for these bears, and we're on front lines of the hardest clear cutting campaign in Montana. It's a rough place to do business. Yeah.
Understandable. So I definitely want to ask you a little more about the art question, but I wanted to just backtrack, talk a little bit more about the Climate Refuge stuff, because at Eco Integrity Alliance, we're thinking also similarly of going on the offense instead of just always trying to protect things defensively. So we have our campaign for basically public lands as biodiversity and climate reserves as a part of the global biodiversity framework, which calls for 30% of ecosystems to be protected by 2030, 50% by 2050, also a way to meet climate targets. But I really love the idea of these northern areas. That's eventually I'd like to see all public lands, but that makes sense as to where to start, particularly because the northern areas are going to be less likely impacted by climate change, I assume, is part of the argument there. So do you feel like that idea of going on the offense, however you want to frame it, instead of just always defensive, that is what environmentalists should start doing more of?
It's in general, when you're on offense, you have the perception, at least, of controlling the narrative and the playing field, so to speak, instead of just always responding to the Forest Service's you know narratives and such. So I I guess that's a good way to think of it. I'm trying to move gradually away from notions of battle and military language and offense and defense. It's impossible. I mean, we are in a battle for you know for the earth, and so it's the words are not inappropriate, but they do take a toll on your mind to be thinking that way. But I would not disagree with your proposal there, your hypothesis. I think just again finding the root of joy in why we love these places and communicating that at a different pitch, a different level, a different chord, a different melody, whatever is important to reach the non-traditional, reach the imagination of non-traditional participants and stakeholders, public lands owners, which is of course all of us. And the idea that one story can really speak for an enormous movement. We did a lot of advocacy in Portland, Maine, for a number of reasons, all kind of random, but it was a good place. It had a great core group of supporters there for the Yaak, strangely enough. I've been teaching there 20, 25, 30 years. I don't know, a long time. And over the years, a lot of people have really gotten excited about the idea of this mythical valley out here, in the Northwest that nobody's ever been to, nobody's ever seen, and that all this singular stuff going on out there. And they have this in Portland, Maine has an incredible representative in U.S. House of Representatives, Shelley Pingree, a huge climate champion. And her constituency there in Portland started writing her about this place in Yaak and the old forest at Black Ram. And it led her to investigate the role of old and mature forest in storing carbon. And she wrote, I believe, the first letter on the subject to the Forest Service and to the Biden administration saying, hey, we need to be protecting all these old and mature forests. And that came out of this one 315-year-old spruce tree, this one guitar that played in her district. And it motivated her to research and make this incredible climate initiative to advance it. And she didn't just ask for Black Ram to be protected. She asked for all old and mature forest on public land, which is some 100 million acres. And that's, we're starting to talk about real conservation at that scale. To go from the seed of one tree to 100 million acres of potential protection is it's kind of an extraordinary concept. Of course, we're not there, but we're the adventure is on the way. We're taking our first steps, and it will happen.
Yeah, and I hear you on the battle metaphor. I think about that a lot. In one sense, we are in a battle. It's hard to deny that, but I think a different sort of framing can be helpful. And the way I'm trying to look at it more and more is coming from a place of love and joy. It does always feel like a fight, but remembering why we're doing this is a positive pursuit. It's really not a negative pursuit. But maybe another way of looking at it is controlling the narrative, writing our own story in a sense. So
Yeah,
we're saying these lands need to be protected.
totally.
They might come at it, we might have to address it, playing defense, however you want to frame it, that's necessary too. But what do you think about that angle on things?
Absolutely. No, I agree completely. And that's why the artists have been so incredibly effective. They work at a different level. They're not hostage to the tyranny of math. They see and witness and experience these forests more the way that so-called normal people do, the non-scientist or the non-commercial extractionist. It's an old way of seeing an old forest, but it's new in our culture, and it anything we can do to empower it and re-engage that that relationship between humans and nature really is going to be a win for our species and other species.
Absolutely, 100%. And yeah, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know you got places to go, things to do, but since we're on that thread, I wanted to ask you a bit about your writing. So both of us are writers. You have a bit more prominence than I have. But right now, I actually write eco horror fiction. So I kind of use a subgenre that's sort of fun and entertaining to also get out some messages. And the way I'm always sort of doing it is deciding, okay, my art versus my agenda. And obviously, if I'm writing eco horror, I clearly have a perspective, but I always try very hard to make sure that the story, the characterization, the writing comes first. And then certainly I'm going to put my ideas in there. But so what do you think about that in terms of the art versus the agenda and say any sort of environmental-ish writing?
Yeah. Um, it's it's an ancient conundrum. My own narrow aesthetics, which, in there, though they are narrow, they're deeply held and rooted, is that a sophisticated reader is going to smell a rat. They're gonna know when they're being lectured to, lectured at. And so in my fiction, I try not to bring in my agenda. That's not to say I don't bring in my values, but I try and work away from whatever agenda I might have. I try and keep it out, or again, even to work against it. I'm finishing a draft of a short novel that I want to convert to a musical called White Bark. It's about the white bark pine and the collapse of white bark pine and its import to grizzlies, the number one most important food source for mother grizzlies with cubs up at elevation where they can stay away from the males. And in the story, there's a young girl who's uh, bereft at what's become of her hometown of Bozeman, Montana, the gentrification, and so she just heads out for the country, kind of Huck Finish, and she can hear this guitar coming, the sound of this guitar coming from the north and west somewhere, and she's the only one who can hear it, but she believes in it. She's tracking toward it, on foot, and she encounters a young bear who's had to leave Yellowstone, young male grizzly dispersing, and they travel together north and west seeking refuge and cooler temperatures and uh, better life and uh, it's one of the protagonists in the story, to your question, is a logger, and I can't make him be a villain. Uh, he has to be a likable positive character for us to take the story seriously, I think, and not have it be parody and one-dimensional caricature of good and evil, and to make the story as complex as the ecosystem it's taking place in which it's taking place. So, long answer to your question, but yeah, the short answer is a sophisticated reader will smell a rat, and I don't want anybody smelling a rat when they're reading my work.
Yeah, that's a great summation of that. I really appreciate that. Well, Rick, thank you so much for taking the time. Thanks for all the work you're doing. Where can people find out more about Yaak Valley Forest Council and your writing too?
Well, thank you, Josh, and you're doing so much great work at such great scale. It's I'm really grateful to you for all you're doing. The Yaak Valley Forest Council, it's two A's. It's a Kootenai word, YAAK. I believe it's the word for arrow because the Yaak River is so straight, like an arrow that goes down into the curve of the Kootenai River, which is like a bow. It's yakvalley.org, and yeah, we've got contact information there and more information than a person could probably manage in half a lifetime. But it's all there, or most of it.
Cool. And if people want to check out your writings, which I will just endorse you, you can give me the check later. But folks definitely need to check out Rick's writings. He's an exemplary writer. He's got fiction. He's got nonfiction. Just pretty much pick up any of his books, and you'll be pretty impressed. I guarantee it. So where can people find your books?
You know, the if you're fortunate enough to have an independent bookstore in your community, it may not be on the shelf, but you can go in and ask them, and they'll find it for you somehow, some way. Yeah.
They will. Well, thanks again for everything. Really appreciate it.
You too, Josh. Thanks again. Take care.